Yeah, yeah. Steelers by the lake, with the win to say. James Strong, Cody Tanner, host on the mic. About to dive in deep, keep it live, that's right.
Welcome to the Steelers by the Lake podcast. My name is James Strong, joined by my co-host today, Nick Pretzel. Nick, how are you doing on this wonderful, sunny Saturday morning?
I'm doing well, James. It is indeed a sunny Saturday morning, and what a better day to get up bright and early. Well, not too early, but to get up and talk about Steelers news and some AFC North news as well, seeing as it's a bit of the slow season here for football news.
Absolutely. So we're going to get things going on the show. We're actually going to start a new series on position camp battles and try and cover them all before training camp kicks off here in about a month. So we're going to cover some of that today. But before we get too far into it, a shout out to our sponsor at the Edinburgh Hotel Bar. Supporters of Steelers by the Lake podcast include Edinburgh Hotel Bar, offering free buzzworthy pub trivia every Wednesday at 7 p.m. located at 100 Meadville Street in downtown Edinburgh. For more information is available at 814-734-5103 or edinburghhotelbar.com. Nick, let's jump into this, man. Oh, you got something good to say about the hotel bar. Do it, man.
I was going to say Edinburgh Hotel Bar. You had me at hotel.
That's it, buddy. That's it. That's just an absolute cornerstone for people from the area. Even when you're a little further away, like myself, I'm from Erie, but I have a lot of friends that went to Edinburgh College, so I've been out to the area for the nightlife in my younger years, and that's just a staple in that area, whether you're going during the day for some food or watching some sports, or whether you're going at night for the nightlife. It's a great all-around place to hang out, no doubt about it. So big news for the Steelers. We finally got a contract extension. Not the guy everyone was hoping for and waiting for, but Deshaun Elliott getting a 2-year extension for an additional $12.65 million. Nick, how do you feel about this signing?
Elliott's a guy that I'm happy to have under contract. I know we have a group chat with the other co-hosts, and I sent a message and I said, that's an odd way to spell TJ Watt. However, all joking aside, Elliott's a hard hitter. He gets involved in the run game. I'm a big fan of his style of play. He's got that Steelers mentality, sort of hard-hitting, smash-mouth football. So I'm not upset by the signing at all. And as you reminded me, James, and as I'm sure we'll remind all the listeners out there, there's still money to pay TJ. This is not going to prevent us from paying him. So all in all, I can't say I'm too upset with the signing. I'm just still anxious to get that TJ Watt deal done.
I think it's a fantastic move for Pittsburgh. I'm with you on this. Deshaun Elliott really kind of stabilized things in the secondary last year. This is the best safety that Minka has played next to in his entire Pittsburgh Steelers career. And I expect with the chemistry of the two of them to get better as time goes on, the production and turnovers to increase as well. One thing that is just absolutely tremendous from him, of all NFL players last year who had 100-plus tackles, he had 108 on 111 attempts. Only 3 missed tackles on the entire season, which his missed tackle rate was 2.7%, the lowest in the NFL with 100 tackles made by that individual. So as reliable as it gets to tackling, I understand they're probably going to move both of them around quite a bit more this year because of the versatility. He can cover deep. He can cover one-on-one with tight ends. He can cover in the slot a little bit. He's great against the run. So just an extremely versatile safety, and the best strong safety we've seen in a long time now, since probably before Terrell Edmunds in his reign with the Steelers too. So just a really nice addition. I know early in the season last year it was splash play after splash play, and Cody was calling him the best safety that this team had seen since Troy Polamalu. That's really saying something. So we are big Deshaun Elliott fans in this show. And I like what this does for the position for the future too. You want to go into NFL drafts not having to address 10 different positions. This puts you in a spot where if you do take a safety, it's not going to be in the top 3 or 4 rounds anytime soon, because now you're just drafting for depth if you do draft a safety. So I love this. I think it's a great move, but we're not the only ones in this division that seem to be fortifying their secondary. The Baltimore Ravens also doing it. Nick, what do you got on the Ravens bolstering their secondary?
Yeah, I know there had been some rumors recently about the Steelers being interested in picking up another corner and adding a little piece to that room. We were talking a bit before the show. We don't really understand why, at least not that's members of this show and not members of NFL teams, because we sort of see an established room there. You've got Darius Slay on one side. You've got Joey Porter Jr. on the other side. Beanie Bishop seems to be locked in as the nickel corner there. And you also brought in Brandon Eccles in free agency. So it doesn't really seem that there's a large need to bring in another guy that you're going to pay a decent amount of money to sit on the bench or to be a rotational piece. That being said, one of those guys that was rumored to be going to Pittsburgh was Jair Alexander, who had been recently cut from the Green Bay Packers. And he has now been picked up by our AFC North rival, the Baltimore Ravens. Adding to a very deep cornerback room that they've got there. They've got some really solid DBs, both from recent drafts and from free agency. And they're looking pretty deep there. But I think we have the same problem as I encountered on my 53 when I was wondering which corner to cut. And I'm sure we'll get into that a bit with our position battles as well. But it'll be kind of fun to see DK hopefully line up opposite Alexander twice a year and just beat him on every rep, hopefully, with the size mismatch that would be.
I feel like that's the thing I'm most excited about with this signing, because the skill level of Jair Alexander is not a question, right? He's a very talented guy. He is on the smaller side, so that would be a very difficult matchup if he did end up matched up against DK Metcalf. I assume that they'll probably put Marlon Humphrey on Metcalf because he's a little bigger of a corner, which would then move Jair probably over to Calvin Austin, Roman Wilson, those guys. So size-wise, that's a better matchup for him. But it's the durability thing for Jair, right? And that's why I wasn't so excited about the possibility of Pittsburgh going after him. Skill level and age-wise, yes, he's very talented. He's not 30 yet, so those are all things that you would want in a corner. But he hasn't played more than 7 games in a season due to injury in the last, 3 years.
Yeah.
So that's a big issue if you're counting on a guy to be a starting corner for you. And that's going to be the case there. He'll be a starting corner. So will he be healthy for all the games versus Pittsburgh? I kind of doubt it. So we'll see how that plays out. But skill level-wise, that's a really key addition for a team who already had a pretty talented secondary. So that does make the Ravens a little bit more difficult to handle when we face them twice a year. And if both teams are good, you never know. They might face them a third time as well.
Absolutely. And the durability then really plays into that in going into the year. If you're going to be playing them in the postseason, that guy might not be there if he's not able to maintain his health throughout even the course of the regular season. Not to mention that the Steelers and Ravens matchups come later in the season this year. So that also poses a question of will he be there, won't he be there? I'm not sure when the Ravens bye week is. I know ours is earlier on, which poses a bit of a risk for some of our guys that might have a bit of an issue keeping themselves on the field. But depending on when their bye week is, that might also factor into when he would be available and when he wouldn't be. So definitely a big concern that I had in the rumors of whether we picked up him or whether we picked up Jalen Ramsey or anything like that. But it'll be interesting to see how often he's able to suit up for the Ravens and if we even do see him twice a year, if that.
Absolutely. And also going to within the division here, over in Cleveland, they've got their own issues going on, and it starts with Shedeur Sanders. A lot more coming out about Shedeur on teams saying this is why we actually passed on him, not because of skill, because of this, blah, blah, blah. we are now finding out that Shedeur Sanders has been pulled over for what appears to be his third speeding violation since being a Cleveland Brown. This is less than 2 months now of him being in this city. And at least 2 of the violations were over 100 miles an hour in a 60-mile-an-hour zone. He also had a court date that he skipped for one of these violations. It's starting to stack up already in a position where if this was a 5th-round pick that was not the son of a Hall of Famer, he might have been cut by the team already. So he's obviously going to get a little extra leeway, but 3 speeding tickets of exceeding 100 miles an hour in a 60-mile-an-hour zone is a little bit crazy for somebody to have on a resume in like a couple years' time, let alone 2 months. Things seem to be spiraling out of control already for Shedeur Sanders. But what's your take on all this, Nick?
I was wondering if he thought he was either a Georgia Bulldog or if he thought he was trying to relive draft night and go triple digits when he was supposed to go doubles. But in any case, it's not a good look for a guy who's trying to prove himself to be more than what the NFL thought he was, especially a guy who, according to most of the reports I've seen, now who knows what's training camp noise and what isn't, but was looking to be one of the better quarterbacks in that very crowded quarterback room for the Cleveland Browns. It's going to be tough for him to get on. To be fair, it is the Browns. So we don't know. Maybe they'll just look past it and they'll make a classic Cleveland Browns decision. However, on any other of the 32 NFL teams, excluding maybe the Bengals, you would think that it would be now a much steeper climb for him to make his way to the top of that depth chart or even remain on it at this point as a rookie guy who was drafted in the later rounds, causing some trouble before we even get to the preseason. And I don't know. It's not a good look for Sanders, but he's also a Sanders. So who knows how much weight that'll carry for him. But in addition to having that speed, thank goodness no one was hurt, but missing the court date on top of that adds another level to it. So we'll see what action the NFL takes, if any. I know they're not doing much with the Rashee Rice situation until he actually gets a verdict in his case. So it'll be interesting to see what punishment is passed out there, if any, or if the Browns decide to take any action themselves. But again, Browns gonna Browns, and we'll just see how that plays out for them in the long term.
Yeah, I feel like there's a chance that this is kind of going to get their hand is going to be forced in this situation because speeding tickets kind of, as far as getting in trouble with the law, that's on the lower end of things. Let's be realistic. But it sounds like there's a real big entitlement issue going on here, which thankfully the Steelers were able to identify before making the mistake of drafting a guy like this. But when you go as far as skipping court dates, something that should be a minor infraction can actually lead to a bigger issue where the legal system says, hey, guess what, buddy? Now we got a warrant for you. You don't get to just skip court dates and not have any repercussion for it. Even if it's something as simple as a speeding ticket violation, that turns into a bigger issue when you start skipping the court dates. So we'll see how this plays out, but it seems to me like this is probably stuff he was getting away with all along. Law enforcement, wherever he was at, said, okay, we get it. You're playing for the local college. You're Deion's son. Well, guess what? Being Deion's son means nothing in Cleveland.
Yep.
That doesn't mean a thing in Cleveland. So when somebody pulls you over, they're not going to say, oh, crap, this is Deion's kid. I better let him off the hook and not give him any kind of ticket or anything. They're just going to go ahead and give you a ticket. Now, if you were the starting quarterback, if you're a first-round pick, maybe then you're getting off with no violation. But that's not happening for somebody who already is getting a bad reputation within their local law enforcement. So definitely a real mess they've got going on there that could be getting worse by him not just owning up to his own mistakes here.
And it kind of, to me, reflects a lot of the noise we were hearing about his meetings with teams in the pre-draft process of him just not caring or throwing around the, oh, do you know who my dad is, in
Hmm.
when he was called out on things that he wasn't doing correctly. So who knows what actually is going down, but it seems to be, from the news that we've been hearing and the reports that we were hearing coming out of the pre-draft process, that he's still got that sort of mentality of I can do what I want because I am who I am, and then just like Shadoring it up. So
Yeah.
um, it's a tough thing to see, and you hate to see guys who are legacies to the NFL have that sort of attitude. You'd rather see somebody, in my opinion, who, like, not saying that they're perfect examples, but like a Joey Porter Jr.,
Hmm.
who isn't causing problems and, yeah, can be a bit like proud of himself and can throw some trash talk around, but so did his dad. And it's not like a, oh, I'm going to get off whatever I want because I'm Joey Porter's son. And I know he doesn't have the same level of star power as Dion necessarily, but he's still a well-known guy, and he doesn't seem to throw his dad's status around. He seems to want to make his own way and do his
Yeah.
own thing. And I'm not saying that just as a Steelers fan. It's just something that I'd rather see out of those guys of, hey, I want to make my own way. I want to be my own star. I want to do my own thing, rather than try to ride daddy's coattails into the NFL and also through the world and not care about the consequences of anything else. And again, thank God no one was hurt, but someone seriously could have been with the speeds he was going.
Yeah.
And you can kind of get away with that a little bit more when you're in Colorado and you can drive down those country back roads. But in the city of Cleveland, you might ram into 2 or 3 people before you stop that car going those speeds. So just want to make sure as well that he's being cautious and not just throwing things to the wind and not giving a care about anyone else's safety too.
Yeah. In this violation too was at 12:30 in the morning, which does lead the old adage of nothing good happens after midnight.
Yep.
What are you doing out that late driving that kind of speed? You do have to understand that if you're going to take the risk, let's say he's like 100% sober, he wasn't partying, he wasn't doing anything he wasn't supposed to, no alcohol involved or anything like that. Let's say he's 100% sober. There's a lot of drivers on the road at 12:30 at night that are not.
Yeah.
So if you're going that kind of speed, you have to be weaving in and out of traffic. Let's not pretend that there's no cars on the road at 12:30 in the morning. There definitely are, and some of those drivers are definitely inebriated, and they're not going to have the reactions that a normal sober driver is, and that's assuming that you don't have anything in your system, which at 12:30 at night, not always the case.
And even if it's not the alcohol thing, at 12:30 at night, some people are more tired than others, and you might
Mm-hmm.
get people that are just waking up for a third shift or a second shift or something along those lines, and that can impair your driving as well. So even if you are completely under of not under the influence of any substance or alcohol or anything along those lines, it's still not necessarily your best driving, and you're not the only driver on the road. Even if you are
Mm-hmm.
completely unimpaired, you don't know who else is, or who's texting, or who's not paying attention, or anything like that, or merging too quickly, and then you try to maneuver. And so,
Yeah.
especially in cities where there's further lanes of traffic and more merging and more exiting and entrancing and all of those kinds of things when you're on the highway, just something that's not really a good look for someone who's trying to create a better name for themselves, which we would think he'd want to in order to make the team.
Yeah. Yeah. So speaking of people with opportunities and seeing what they can do here, let's move on to our next topic, and that's a transaction for the Pittsburgh Steelers. They have released running back Jonathan Ward, who was kind of a back of the roster practice squad, off and on the 53 last year with some injuries at the running back position, has some kick return capability, kind of a quicker running back, but the running back room looking like a very deep position, and one less guy there to compete for it. So any thoughts on Jonathan Ward being released at what is kind of an odd time of year to be released?
I feel kind of bad for the guy because I always really wanted Jonathan to get his shot, but with the abundance of kick return guys that we've got now, with the abundance of running back options that we have, even with some tight ends having some versatility at fullback as well. It seems like it was one of those positions where it was like, okay, we know this guy's not really going to be a guy for us. And I think the Steelers are pretty good at giving guys a better shot and saying, hey, we know you're not going to make it with us. Let's see if we can cut you ahead of time. That gives you a chance to be picked up by another team. It works best for both groups. They know they're not going to be keeping this guy. They know he's not really competing for one of their jobs. So maybe they bring him back to the practice squad in the future. Who knows? But I do believe that it was more likely than not a move by the Steelers to say, hey, we want to give you a shot to be signed by another team. Let your agent start making some phone calls and just give him the best shot to be able to keep making money in the league.
I agree. I think this is a courtesy thing. The running back position is not necessarily already determined, but the top four positions are pretty concrete. And that's assuming that they keep four. They might not. They oftentimes only keep three running backs. And then the group of guys behind that is thicker than it's been in a while. So I feel like his chances of making the team or even sticking on the practice squad were a lot longer than they would have been in previous seasons. So if that's all this is, then it's a classy move by the Steelers, which wouldn't be the first time that they've done something like this. So hopefully that's all it is. Hopefully the kid's able to catch on somewhere else, but only time will tell on that. Speaking of positions being kind of thick, it's time for our main topic of the day. We're going to talk training camp position battles. We're going to cover probably 2 a week to get through all of them before training camp starts. Starting with one of my favorite and I think one of the most highly contested positions this year. Today we're going to cover the defensive line and safety, but we're starting defensive line. This is just a crazy, crazy battle to me this year. Sometimes Pittsburgh keeps 6. Sometimes they keep 7. You never know what they're going to do. Just for a little bit of reference, we're not talking any outside linebackers in this. We're only talking defensive ends and nose tackles and defensive tackles, whatever the classification may be. So you're talking your 285, 300, 350-pound dudes, the big boys up front. So I think what we can probably agree on is who's going to make the roster for sure, right? I would say the top 3 to 4 positions are pretty much locked. First-round pick Derek Harmon, there's no way he doesn't make the team. Cameron Hayward, obviously going to make the team. Keanu Benton, those are locks. I feel like Daniel Akwale, the acquisition in the offseason, is also a lock. But outside of that, it's very difficult to call anybody a lock. I think maybe the next closest is Y.A. Black. What about you? Do you think Y.A. Black is a lock? Wasn't he like a 5th-round pick or a 6th-round pick? It's tough to call those guys a lock, but I feel like the investment's too high to move on from.
It is tough. You see the youth, and that's what really kind of attracts me to YA. They were, now granted, it was the draft season, and you're not going to talk lowly of any of your picks, but they were absolutely glowing when they got that big body to have in the trenches. And talk about being thick at a position. This is the thickest of the positions aside from the offensive line. So we love to see those big boys come in and be able to bolster what was a very problematic thing for us last year in our run defense. And I think that's what YA was brought in to do. I personally, being slightly less experienced about in some of these things, and also just having a desire to be younger and to have these guys that we will have under contracts for a bit longer, have YA as a bit more of a lock over Akwale, even though I think Akwale still makes the team. I think the guy who's the biggest question mark on whether or not he makes the roster is Isaiah Loudermilk, because he's got that veteran presence. They've had him for a while. They know what he's capable of, and we've seen him roll out there a couple times. Now, has it always been the prettiest? No, but he's not going to be your top of the roster guy. And then we have so many other guys on the roster behind him that are fighting for this spot. But if you ask me, the top 3, I agree with entirely. I don't think Hayward, Harmon, or Benton are anywhere near losing even their first spot on the roster, their starting position, which is interesting to see because Tomlin tends to like to not give out the gate the starting position to rookies. He likes to make them earn it a little bit through camp, if that. So it's interesting to see Loudermilk be bumped down the depth chart for Harmon a little bit just because of that sort of tradition. But I'm not upset by it at all. I think Harmon is worthy of starting over Loudermilk by leagues and miles. So yeah, I don't know. It's tough because Aquale and Black I feel like are neck and neck. And I don't know that necessarily either of them are a lock, but I don't see either of them not making the team either. I just don't know if they're second or third guy up in terms of how many guys we're keeping on the roster.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I feel like those are definitely, as far as talent, the two next most talented guys with a huge possibility of upside on YA Black, which is why I think cutting him would be an insane move. So I don't think that's going to happen. I think Aquale, you brought him in to be a guy who could stabilize the front in case you didn't get who you wanted in the draft, right? The biggest issue was that we didn't have a defensive end opposite of Cam Hayward who could hold up against the run. That is Aquale's specialty. He is excellent against the run as a base 3-4 defensive end. So I think because of that, being in the position they are with having to face the Ravens twice a year and their very difficult run game, I feel like a guy like Aquale is almost a lock because of that. Because if things go sideways and let's say Harmon's just having a tough time against the run, great getting after the quarterback and just having a tough time against the run, in a game like those games against the Ravens, you can lean a little heavier on Aquale, where we know he's got the anchor and ability to shed off a block and get the tackler and really help against the run. So I feel like that's his big value, but also kind of the value on YA Black. That's a lot of why he was drafted, because he is that big, long-armed guy who's tough to move, who can shed a blocker and get that tackle and keep the running back from getting downfield. Now, this second group of guys, you touched base and started with Isaiah Loudermilk, and I agree. I think that's kind of the top skill of this next group. But we've got Isaiah Loudermilk. Let's not forget about the Marvin Leal, who's entering the final year of his rookie deal. He was a third-round pick. And typically those third-round picks, you want to develop them into starters. That has not happened for DeMarvin Leal, which is really unfortunate. But this is going to be a big-time battle for him this year. Let's not forget Dean Lowry, who was brought in last year to be a high-quality backup defensive lineman. Seemed to kind of have the same issues that we had with the starting units as far as getting beat up on the run game, not really adding anything in the pass rush. I could see him kind of being odd man out. Also, let's not forget about last year's rookie Logan Lee, a defensive end type who did play a little nose tackle in the preseason before getting injured and missing the entire season. This team, to me, has 10 defensive linemen who are easily rosterable, but you don't keep that many.
No.
So it might be one of those situations where you try to trade somebody who's on that roster bubble that fits 6th-round area. Can you possibly get something from another team for a DeMarvin Leal or an Isaiah Loudermilk or a Logan Lee? Because you can't keep them all. And I would lean towards maybe trying to keep Logan Lee over Isaiah Loudermilk or Leal or even Lowry. It's a battle of the L's. And 3 of the 4 guys are going to take an L, in my opinion, and not make this team. And maybe you kind of lean on the youth with Logan Lee as being that final guy. But can any of these guys get after the quarterback? That's the key, because I feel like with our 4th and 5th guys that we're talking about here with Aquale and with YA Black, getting after the quarterback is not their specialty.
No.
So that 6th guy might want to be somebody who can get after the quarterback a little bit more. But I don't know who it is out of this group, because none of them have really done it successfully in the NFL.
Right, and I think the reason that I would lean a bit towards Logan Lee, aside from having the pride in my heart of having mocked him to us in our mock drafts a couple years ago, is that he's the one who seems to be the most untested out of this group, and that's part of the product of him being younger and also of him not having played as much aside from the preseason, but we liked what we saw from him in the preseason last year. And I think the preseason is really going to determine which of these guys makes it to the roster. And these aren't even the bottom of the roster guys. We've still got 3 guys that are listed on our depth chart that we haven't even mentioned. So it's really a great problem to have all these guys who are serviceable options. But I think Lee might have that potential of becoming a guy who can get after the quarterback that gives him the best shot of beating out Isaiah Loudermilk. The other thing that really kind of comes to mind here is that he was sidelined for so long, and it's hard to know what you have in a guy until you really get to see him be out on the field and do his thing. So it'll be interesting to see that training camp battle go off, but I don't see either Otowemo, I'm probably pronouncing that terribly wrong, Davis or Slade make the roster. But like you said, with the training camp battles going on, with all the competition that's going to be there, with all of these guys fighting for their jobs, I'm really hoping that, as you said, we can get some sort of compensation for some of these other guys, because the Steelers are going to, by that point, probably have an idea of who their guy is. And in order to potentially keep people from having swiped a guy that another team wants in the cuts and the roster moves that happen there for practice squad or for roster sake, it'll be a potential bargaining piece there that I'm hoping Khan can make use of.
Yeah, I feel like the guy is probably the Marvin Leal. You know, being a former 3rd-round pick, he's still only 24 years old. I could see a lot of people saying they really liked him going into the draft and thinking that Pittsburgh's misused him, which I feel like the handling of DeMarvin Leal probably has not done DeMarvin Leal any services, just because it's been, we don't know if you're going to play outside linebacker or defensive end, kind of be ready for both. And you need to do different things. If he's going to be an outside linebacker and he knows that 100%, then he needs to be at the lighter weight so that he can move a little bit better to get around a tackle instead of trying to go through him. But if you're going to be a defensive end, that means you're going to play some D tackle in your nickel, which means you need to be a little heavier to handle the double teams and all the run that's coming on the interior. So him trying to find the balance between the two has made it very, very difficult on him. I hope he has an awesome preseason and makes it difficult for him to cut, which makes him maybe a possibility to get a trade and get some late round compensation for him or something. Or maybe, you know what, he's just so good that you can't possibly cut him. That's a great problem to have too.
Absolutely. And I think the only other thing that really factors into who that last guy, if we keep 6, is going to be is presently under at least the ESPN depth chart. We've got Y.A. Black and Logan Lee both listed as nose tackles. Mm-hmm. So if you're looking to keep another defensive end type, you might be looking at more of an Isaiah Loudermilk or a Dean Lowry, which I would not mind. But again, I just really do have a soft spot for Logan Lee. Maybe it's a little bit of that bias there. But he is listed as a nose tackle as well. So if they're looking to keep another defensive end type guy, it might not do Lee any favors.
And I think that's kind of – so I understand why they have him listed as nose tackle because he played it in the preseason last year. But body-wise, he is not a nose tackle, and it's not what he played in college either. It was a necessity thing last preseason because there was a whole rash of injuries at the nose tackle position, and there was no one healthy to play nose tackle at the end of these preseason games. So poor Logan Lee was just the guy that got the opportunity to do it. So I think that he's more of a defensive end naturally than he is a nose tackle. He'd be way undersized to play nose, but we've seen crazier things. Let's move over to the safety position before we run out of time for today's show and kind of talk about what's going on there. Now, as far as the safety position, it feels to me like the top 4 are locks, and there really isn't much of a question about it. But beyond that, that's where things get a little bit more of a question. So obviously, Minkah Fitzpatrick and Deshaun Elliott are our starting safeties. They signed Juan Thornhill, and that was a move that Juan Thornhill is a very highly skilled safety, so he's going to be the number 3. We're not going to see Miles Killebrew not make the team. He's the special teams captain, who is safety just kind of by default as his other position. So the real question to me is, do they keep 5? Do they keep 4? Do they keep 5? If they keep 5, I think anybody who watches this show knows how I feel about Sebastian Castro. I had him on my 53-man prediction. He's not the only one listed. There's also Gwendell Johnson as a backup safety on this team. I feel like there's probably a few other guys with some safety versatility that's not being listed on the site I'm using here. But that's kind of the picture here. What are your thoughts on all this? Do you think 4? Do you think 5? Is there somebody we're not even looking at here?
Not that I can see on the depth chart that I've got pulled up as well. Like you said, there might be some safety versatility with some of the other guys on the roster, but I'm thinking 4 just because that gives you the ability to keep players elsewhere, and it's harder for those undrafted guys to make the roster. Not that Castro couldn't. I was taking him in some of my mock drafts that I was doing because I did way too many of them in some of the middle to late rounds for us. He's a guy that's got great ability. He's just got a lot of upside. So it's a guy that I would like to see at least get onto the practice squad to maintain, keep him on the roster, keep him available. And that way, if one of those 4 that we keep goes down, you can bring him up in light of an injury. But it would be a shame to see him go because just as you are, I'm also high on him and his ability. But it's hard to see us keeping more than 4 when there's so many other positions that need backups, especially when you get looking into some of the offensive side of the ball as we did with our 53-man rosters. And I know we're potentially still waiting on one of those from Cody. But it'll be interesting to see if they do keep 5, where else they pull a guy from in order to make that work. But I'm with you. Those 4 seem to be a lock in those positions, and I don't know that they're going to keep 5. If they do, I would like it to be Castro.
Obviously, I'm 100% with you on Castro being the 5th guy if they decide to go that route. He was at least one of the undrafted free agents who got a larger chunk of money as far as his signing bonus. So that's an indication that they knew they had to give him more money if they wanted to get him in town. I would like to see him make the team. He does, from my understanding, have some versatility as a slot corner also. So some potential there where maybe if you're in a heavier run possible situation, but there are 3 wide receivers, you could line him up as that nickel slot corner to help a little bit more against the run. So that could be advantageous for him as well. Let's see if he can get some splash in the preseason as far as special teams also. If he can show something on special teams, we might have something. It's about to get loud here in my house in a manner that I cannot control. So let's wrap this show up and call it a day. You want to get us out of here, Nick?
I want to thank everyone for listening. Go ahead and like us on all the socials. We've got TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, all the things. Go ahead and leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Make James here very happy. And with that all being said, see you next time. And this is your hosts, James and Nick, signing off.